putting even more charges on him. And then
when they want you, they want you. I knew they wanted him bad when they waited for that law to get passed.
The judge has been issuing updates regarding Ynw Melly'S potential release from jail, and today a new development was shared. A judge has given the Broward Sheriff's Office until December 16th to provide an explanation as to why Melly should not be released after requesting a 10-day extension. If no valid reason is provided, Melly will be granted his freedom. Melly, whose real name is Jamal Demons, is hopeful that a recent lawsuit filed on his behalf will lead to his release. The lawsuit accuses the Broward Sheriff's Office of mistreating him and violating his constitutional rights. He has been behind bars since 2019, accused of killing 2 of his childhood friends, and has not been able to communicate with his family for the past 3 years. The situation is further complicated by the fact that Melly should have been released by December 7th, according to the original deadline. That was the date prosecutors were supposed to present reasons for keeping him in custody. However, the judge extended the deadline to accommodate the prosecution. This marks just one chapter in Melly's ongoing legal battle, where it seems like the system has been allowed to do whatever it wants to him without consequence. His mother has even taken legal action, suing the county jail over his alleged mistreatment. Melly's lawyers claim he is being held under cruel conditions, including being confined to a freezing cold cell, denied edible food, and isolated from human contact. In a heartfelt and emotional interview, Ynw Melly'S mother, Jamie King, painted a grim picture of her son's life behind bars. Her words revealed the immense toll the harsh prison conditions have taken on Melly, who has been incarcerated for over 4 years as he awaits trial for the murder of his 2 childhood friends. With growing concern for her son's well-being, Jamie expressed fear that Melly may not survive much longer in such a grueling and unforgiving environment. Her words reflected a mother's deep pain as she desperately tried to convey the severity of the situation and how the confinement was slowly breaking him. Despite the fact that Melly had been granted a mistrial, which effectively gave him a win in his case, Jamie emphasized the unfairness of his continued incarceration. In the criminal justice system, a mistrial often represents an opportunity for the defendant to be released or at least receive a fairer chance for a retrial. However, even with this legal victory, Melly remained behind bars, his freedom out of reach. For Jamie, this was a clear injustice. She pointed out that while some inmates, even those convicted of serious crimes, were allowed access to basic rights such as communication via phones and letters, her son had been deprived of these same privileges. The stark disparity in the treatment of prisoners, especially those who have not yet been convicted, further fueled her frustration. Jamie's public outcry over Melly's treatment behind bars quickly garnered attention, sparking debates on social media and within the criminal justice community. Many supporters rallied around her, questioning the fairness of denying an individual access to communication, which is a basic human right. They argued that these basic privileges are essential for mental health and emotional well-being, especially in the isolating and often dangerous environment of prison. For Jamie, the denial of such rights was not only a matter of fairness but also a matter of her son's mental and physical survival. She feared that without the ability to stay connected to his family and loved ones, Melly's emotional state would continue to deteriorate, potentially leading to even darker outcomes. However, her statements did not go unchallenged. One of the loudest critics of Jamie's claims was Charleston White, a well-known public figure and social commentator who has made a name for himself by weighing in on controversial topics. White took to social media to address Jamie's concerns, sharply criticizing Melly's complaints about his prison conditions. According to White, as someone accused of taking 2 lives, Melly had no right to expect special treatment or complain about the hardships of incarceration. White's argument centered on the notion that Melly, as an individual who had allegedly taken the lives of 2 people, should not receive any sympathy or attention for his current suffering in prison. White's comments quickly sparked heated debates, dividing the public into 2 distinct camps. On one side, supporters of Melly's mother and others advocating for prisoners' rights echoed Jamie's concerns, arguing that even individuals accused of heinous crimes should not be denied their basic human rights while they await trial. They emphasized that the principle of innocence until proven guilty should apply to all, and that Melly's mistreatment was a violation of his rights as a human being. They also raised concerns about the potential mental and physical toll that such harsh conditions could have on Melly, particularly since he had yet to be convicted. For them, the denial of basic privileges was not only unjust but also dangerous, especially for someone who had already been subjected to such long periods of confinement without a resolution to his case. On the other side of the debate, those who agreed with Charleston White's position argued that Melly's legal situation was different. They felt that the gravity of the charges against him, the alleged murders of his friends, meant that he should not be treated as a victim in the eyes of the law. White's critics accused him of being callous and dismissive, but his supporters maintained that individuals who are accused of taking lives, especially in such a violent manner, should face the full weight of their punishment without the expectation of leniency or special treatment. For them, Melly's case represented a larger issue of accountability, where even in the face of alleged mistreatment, Melly's actions could not be overlooked or excused. Despite the criticisms and differing opinions, Jamie's voice continued to resonate with many who viewed her son's continued incarceration as an unfair punishment in itself. Her concerns over the emotional toll on Melly, especially given the uncertainty of his trial and the extended period of time he had already spent behind bars, struck a chord with those who believed that the justice system was not doing enough to ensure that he received a fair trial in a timely manner. As the legal process dragged on, many supporters began to wonder whether Melly's prolonged confinement without a definitive conviction was becoming a form of punishment in itself, one that was harming his mental and emotional health even before a verdict had been reached. The criticism from Charleston White and others who aligned with his views did little to quell the growing outcry. While some felt that the treatment of inmates like Melly was justified due to the nature of the charges against him, others remained steadfast in their belief that the legal system should treat all individuals, regardless of the accusations against them, with fairness and dignity in the face of such harsh realities. Jamie King's plea for her son's basic rights and the preservation of his well-being continued to shine a light on the deeper issues within the criminal justice system. Whether or not Melly is eventually granted the relief he and his mother seek remains uncertain, but her voice, amplified by those who share her concerns, serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and human dignity, even for those accused of the most heinous crimes. In response, Melly's mother expressed her heartbreak over the situation, emphasizing her helplessness and frustration with the Broward Sheriff's Office. She believes the jail is making its own rules and that there's no one holding them accountable. Despite efforts to address this issue in court, her pleas for justice seem to fall on deaf ears. She believes the sheriff's office should be investigated for its actions. The situation escalated further when Bowie, a supporter of Melly's, spoke out about the stress Melly's family has endured. Bowie had met Melly's mother and expressed his empathy for her, comparing her struggles to what his own mother experienced. This emotional moment added to the already tense situation, drawing attention to the real toll the case has taken on Melly's loved ones. As the case against Ynw Melly progresses, the prosecution has steadily built its case with mounting evidence, much of which points to the rapper's direct involvement in the brutal killings of his two childhood friends, Sack Chaser and Juvie. According to the prosecution, the motive for the murders stemmed from a financial dispute that escalated to extreme measures, with the victims allegedly attempting to extort Melly. This emerging evidence paints a chilling picture of betrayal, greed, and violence, and it has intensified the public scrutiny of Melly's role in the tragedy. The most damning of the evidence presented so far has come from Melly's phone records, which have provided crucial insights into the events leading up to the killings. The prosecution claims that Sack Chaser and Juvie were seeking financial gain from Melly, attempting to extort him after believing they were entitled to a share of the money flowing through his career. Ynw Melly, who was involved in the rap group Ynw, which had gained some notoriety, had reportedly kept much of the profits for himself and his closest collaborator, Ynw Borland. The victims, Sack Chaser and Juvie, were said to have wanted a cut of the earnings despite not being involved in the group's creative or promotional efforts. This disagreement over money, the prosecution argues, eventually led to the violent killings of both men. However, it was a text message sent by Melly after the murders that particularly shocked the public and added a new layer of complexity to the case. Hours after the deaths, Melly allegedly sent a text message to a fellow associate, which simply read, "I did that," with a smiley face emoji. The casual tone of the message, paired with the dark content of the message itself, sent a chilling signal to those following the case. To many, this text message demonstrated a lack of remorse or empathy, reinforcing the prosecution's narrative that Melly was not only involved in the killings but also seemingly indifferent to the loss of life. The inclusion of a smiley face emoji added a macabre and unsettling layer to the already damning message, suggesting that Melly may have viewed the entire situation with a disturbing sense of nonchalance. The text message was not the only troubling piece of evidence recovered from Melly's phone. Investigators also found a video saved on his device, which showed both Melly and Borland hours after the crime, reacting to the aftermath of the murders. In the footage, the two men appear unfazed by the deaths of their friends, displaying no signs of grief or sorrow. Instead, they are seen speaking with an almost eerie sense of calm, discussing their actions and maintaining a positive attitude despite the tragic events that had just unfolded. The video raised further questions about Melly's emotional state following the murders, with many questioning how someone could be so detached from the gravity of the situation. The lack of sadness or remorse displayed in the video struck many as callous, particularly considering that the two men killed were not strangers but close friends of Melly for many years. The prosecutors also presented evidence from the crime scene itself, which further aligned with the theory that the murders were not the result of a random act of violence but a calculated and intentional killing. According to forensic evidence, the crime could not have been a drive-by shooting, as initially suggested by some. Sergeant Williams, a key figure in the investigation, revealed that the trajectory of the bullets indicated that the shooter was likely positioned in the back seat of the vehicle. This information contradicted the earlier theory of a drive-by shooting and suggested that the shooter had been in close proximity to the victims, firing from within the vehicle. This revelation provided key support for the prosecution's argument that the killings were premeditated, rather than a spontaneous act of violence. Further complicating matters was the discovery of physical evidence inside the vehicle the victims had been in. Shell casings, broken glass, and other forensic evidence indicated that the crime had been committed from within the car, as opposed to from an outside source. This crucial detail helped solidify the prosecution's case that the murders had been carried out by someone who was in the vehicle with the victims, likely Melly himself. The evidence seemed to contradict the earlier defense claims that the shooting was the result of an external attack, reinforcing the idea that the deaths of Sack Chaser and Juvie were not random but part of a larger, more deliberate plan. In addition to the evidence recovered from Melly's phone, the prosecution also brought forth testimony from an unexpected source, a rogue member of the Block gang, who claimed that Melly had confided in him about the situation. According to this informant, Melly had expressed concerns that his two friends, Sack Chaser and Juvie, were trying to extort him and had become a threat to his financial stability. The informant claimed that Melly had asked for advice on how to handle the situation, suggesting that the conflict between them had escalated to the point where Melly felt it was necessary to take drastic measures to protect himself. This testimony further reinforced the notion that the murders were motivated by financial gain, with Melly allegedly viewing his friends as obstacles to his success rather than as people he cared about. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Melly has continued to maintain his innocence, with his defense team arguing that he was not involved in the murders. However, the evidence presented so far paints a troubling picture of a man who was allegedly willing to take extreme actions to maintain control over his finances and career. The phone records, text messages, video footage, and forensic evidence all seem to point in the direction of Melly being deeply involved in the deaths of Sack Chaser and Juvie, casting serious doubt on his claims of innocence. As the trial progresses, the defense's strategy in countering the prosecution's mounting evidence remains a critical element to watch. With each new piece of evidence, the case against Ynw Melly grows increasingly complex and troubling. The prosecution has presented a series of disturbing and potentially damning revelations which not only underscore the high-profile nature of the case but also introduce a chilling narrative of betrayal, greed, and violence. Melly's alleged involvement in the brutal killings of his childhood friends, Sack Chaser and Juvie, appears to be rooted in a combination of financial dispute and personal rivalry, leading many to question his character and motivations. A significant portion of the evidence centers around the lack of remorse Melly displayed in the aftermath of the killings. His behavior, particularly the text message he sent with a smiley face just hours after the murders, has raised suspicions about his emotional detachment and the coldness of his actions. Additionally, the financial motives behind the killings, coupled with evidence from his phone records, paint a picture of a man potentially willing to go to extreme lengths to protect his wealth and reputation. Whether or not Melly is ultimately convicted will hinge on how effectively the defense can challenge this narrative, but the evidence against him is undeniably significant. Public interest in the trial has been intense, not just because of Melly's celebrity status, but also because of the unsettling details emerging about his role in the murders. The case continues to capture the public's attention, and as it unfolds, more questions will arise about the depths of Melly's involvement and the potential consequences he faces. One thing is clear: this trial is far from over, and the outcome will have lasting implications for all those involved. The prosecution also presented physical evidence, such as details of the vehicle involved in the crime. A sergeant testified that the shooting could not have been a drive-by, as the shooter had to have been sitting in the back left seat. The crime scene evidence, including bullet trajectories, further supported this theory. The case also took a new turn with the involvement of Melly's co-defendant, Ynw Borland. Borland was arrested on a separate charge of witness tampering. Allegedly, he attempted to intimidate a witness who was called to testify in Melly's trial. The timing of this, just as jury selection was taking place, added another layer of complexity to Melly's case. Borland's home was raided, and investigators found disturbing evidence, including detailed notes on the jurors in Melly's trial. This situation has left many questioning the integrity of the legal process. While Melly's supporters feel he's being treated unfairly, the evidence presented by prosecutors paints a damning picture of his involvement in the crime. Whether or not he will be released remains uncertain as the legal battle continues to unfold.